I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Friday, February the 14th, Valentine's Day. Don't forget your honey on this day. Brought to you entirely by DV Auction, where we are full tilt production sale season right now. I tell you what, we're having 30 or 40 or 50 of them on Saturdays, and we're having several all through the week all over the country, and all hands are on deck, including the feeder flash guy. Where on Thursday it was a 700-mile round trip to Desdemona, Texas to video bulls with my friend Brady Chandler there at the Rooney Angus Ranch there in Desdemona. Their sale will be coming up March the 7th. We'll talk more about it as it gets closer, but full day there and a little bit drained, but what a time to pick to talk about a sensitive subject. But market transparency is a big word that's being thrown around here a lot, and where, you know, you think transparency, what is that? You know, can you see through the market? No, not really, but you want to be able to see as much of the market that takes place. And where is there the most market transparency? Well, obviously in an auction market, and that's why I'm pro auction market, but you can literally see the whole thing happen. I mean, of course, there's some stuff going on there that you kind of need to know the ins and outs of to pick up on, but those of us that love to watch the sale barns and watch the trading activity, the bidding, the auctioneers, the condition of the cattle and everything that goes through, we love that kind of stuff. But market transparency is the biggest in the auctions. I mean, anybody and their dog can come in and watch the sale, but some sales don't really like you to bring the dogs in. But if it's a comfort pet, I guess they got to let you bring it in. I mean, you go into Walmart now and you got the comfort pets with their nose up to the deli counter looking to see what's for supper, but that's kind of ridiculous. But we don't have much market transparency in our fat cattle trade. If you guys come and see any of my talks, that's a big thing that I talk about is the lack of negotiated trade and the lack of market transparency. You know, about 20 years ago, you know, this was becoming very evident that we didn't see a whole lot of market transparency. We still had quite a bit of negotiated trade at the time in your fat cattle arena, but everybody felt like there was more to it than that. So they decided to bring about a thing called mandatory price reporting with USDA. Previous to that, us market reporters, which I used to be one, we sat and had a call sheet in front of us, and we called feedlots all over the country, especially in the 5-area feeding region. We called the feedlots. We found out if they sold any cattle. We got the particulars on the cattle that they sold, and then we would cross-verify that with the packers later on in the week to make sure we had everything picked up and we weren't counting anything twice, and that's the way we reported the market. But they felt like we could do a better job at that, so they invented mandatory price reporting, which was basically a law that said that all your packers that were big enough to make a difference had to send in all of their purchase information twice a day, every business day. And then you would take all that information, which you can't take it on a big chief tablet. They download it into a computer program, and then instead of being market reporters, you were basically just data technicians after that. The market reporters just sat there and stared at all this data that came through, and they looked for fat-fingered stuff, and they'd sort through that, and you really can't really tell what's going on. But then you would have these computer-generated reports that went out, and then all of your number crunchers could look at those and try to crunch them and see if they could figure out what's going on. So they thought that would bring about more market transparency. Well, I was one of the up-and-comers that was brought into St. Joe when this first started, and I started out working with that. I finished up the last of the voluntary feedlot reports, and we brought them all into St. Joseph, Missouri, and then started on the mandatory price reporting, which I immediately found out was not going to be very invigorating. But luckily my old buddy Ray Falk, he retired, and I was chosen to run the Missouri Federal State Market News program, which was a great break for me, and it satisfied the cravings of of a sale barn junkie, and I did that for 15, 16 years. So I kind of know a lot about what's going on in that. But basically, your MPR, mandatory price reporting, it gives you all the information that the packers can give on what the most recent purchases were. But we're thinking that there could be more information in there that we're not getting. We don't see a whole lot of information about the formulas. Yeah, we see some volumes. Of course, they can throw them out into the future, and then it kind of gets mixed up there. But you're trying to figure out what formula pricing is. They basically give you premiums and discounts, but the price range on the premiums and discounts is so wide you can't make heads or tails out of it, and you really don't know what's going on. And so this formula deal that's out there, which is by far the lion's share of your fat cattle trade, nobody really knows what it's all about and what it is. We know that it's roughly based off last week's market, but then there's a lot more to it than that. And so there's some people that are getting excited about this, and God love them. They're wanting to do something to help the industry for your independent feeders, but they would like to find out more about that. They would like to see something that would cause more negotiated trade because they feel like it would give them more leverage. Well, they went to the place where you can get something done, and last week at the NCBA convention, that's where the working committees get together, and they brought this up because mandatory price reporting is up for reauthorization, and now is the time to get in and kind of try to change things and make it where you can get more information or less information. Why would you want less information? You always want more information. But they would like to have more information on the formula trades, and they'd also want some more carcass weight, more timely carcass information, because when we started this deal, we didn't have the technology that we have now. You could basically have the carcass weights the next day if you wanted them, but we always have to wait 2 weeks because that's just the way that it always was. And we also wait 2 weeks for your actual slaughter. But the main thing I was wanting is more information to come through MPR, mandatory price reporting, to try to get a better feel of what the formula trades are to help these guys in the Midwest, which a lot of them are still selling negotiated cash, figure out what the big formula traders are getting for their cattle. Well, you can imagine there's a little pushback. So you had representatives from your big formula trade places, Texas and Kansas primarily, and they kind of butted heads with your Midwestern guys, your Iowa, Missouri, and maybe parts of Nebraska type guys. And you think, well, why would the guys that are in the big formula trade places not want to share any more information in that? Well, they're formula traders. They're tied in with the packers. They're big corporate feeders. And that's what they've done. And we say that formula trade is not negotiated. Well, in a time and place, those formulas are negotiated, maybe once a year, maybe more often than that. But they've each got their own formula. Now, it may, depending on what kind of cattle they like to feed, it might depend more on what the cattle quality grade. It might depend more on what the yield grade or cutability. It might have more to do with the dressing percentage. It might have more to do with the volume of cattle that they're sending in there. It might have to do on the days of the week that they send them. It's just whatever fits their program. And these big corporate feeders haven't gotten this big and this successful in a piss poor investment like feeding cattle by not being smart and knowing what they're doing. And so they're working with the packers to be able to live. And your big corporate feeders are not any different than your corporate packers or any other corporation. They've got a board there, and then they try to make money, and you can't blame people for trying to make money. So they kind of had some pushback on that, that they said, well, we may not want to tell you exactly what we're doing. This is what we're doing. We've learned to make it work for us. And if you guys want to know, what these different premiums and discounts are, then you send some cattle in that way, and you try to negotiate the best deal you can. on those, or try to make a long-term deal or whatever, and kill even more negotiated trade. But we didn't hear too much about it, but it was kind of a standoff there. And they ended up getting it passed, and they're just trying to make it policy to try to get the changes made down the line at USDA for the reauthorization of mandatory price reporting. They're trying to get it to be a policy, an initiative, if you will, of NCBA. But that's where the rubber meets the road. If you want to get something done in this industry, you pretty much still got to go through these working committees at NCBA, because NCBA is the biggest. They got the most membership, and they can get things done. That's basically your industry voice. And I'm not talking about the checkoff or anything like that. Don't get confused with that. I'm just talking about the association itself. But you guys can pick your sides, whichever. You guys know that I wish there was more negotiated trade. I desperately wish that. I like the auction markets. I wish we still sold fat cattle on the bricks and the big river markets, but it's not going to happen anymore. I'm kind of old school. Some people think that's a bad term, but I think it's a term of endearment, is old school, and I'm all about that, kind of preserving Western heritage and all that kind of thing. But times they are changing, and you've got to change with them. But how are we going to be able to get some more leverage in this fat cattle market if we don't have more negotiated trade? Well, maybe we need to have more negotiated grid trade. Just any kind of trade where both the buyer and the seller has something to say about what the fat cattle bring, and then you can see that market. But but the guys that are selling cattle negotiated right now are behind the 8 ball. They don't really know what these other guys are getting in the market. They know that they're not making any money, and then they see these big formula corporate feeders, and they just keep growing and keep getting bigger, and they keep buying more feedlots, and they keep adding on to the ones they have. And you think, how in the hell are they making that work whenever most of them are in the southern plains? Of course, they don't have to fight the mud and all that, but they've got that corn basis, because there's not that many places in the southern plains that'll support corn growth, and you get down here in the Texas Panhandle, western Kansas, places like that, eastern New Mexico, and the irrigation is starting to dry up, and these pivots are starting to sound like a crowded soda shop. And we've got all these big dairies coming in, and they're all sucking water, and they love it out here in the southern plains. They've gotten out of California. They don't have any regulation, and they never thought about maybe practicing some conservation of their own. But we're getting low on water out here. It's only going to get worse. We're having to haul all this corn down here, and buying commodity type cattle, or Mexican cattle, or southeastern cattle, or whatever they can find, and that's what most of them do it with. But they still have to feed them corn. They don't pay the big prices that the guys in the north pay for cattle, but they don't get the performance either. But they've figured out a way to make it work. They're not necessarily ready to tip their hand and show the few negotiated guys that we have what they're doing and how they're making it work. The guys that are in the Midwest that are trying to fight for this industry, they feel like your formula guys are suppressing information, and maybe the guys that do sell formula feel like that if they change any of this stuff up, that it could threaten the arrangements that they have already made. So it's a big struggle, guys, and that's what it is. You guys kind of know how I feel about it, but I can see both sides. We've got an evolving industry and a global economy, and it's an economies of scale feeding these cattle, and it's just tough on the little guys, and it's not a whole lot different than what our Secretary of Agriculture said. He says you're going to have to either get big or get out, and it's a sad situation, but maybe he is right. But I just, every time we lose another participant in this commercial cattle business, it's a little bit tougher, and the vertical integration gets a little bit steeper, and I hate to see it. Let's look at the board for Thursday. February live cattle futures up 50 cents at 119.45. April up 67 cents at 118.52. They were all up as you go out front, but they've been down all week. March feeder cattle up $1.27. About time we saw some relief there, 136.32. April up $1.77 at 138.95. The rest of your traded contracts on feeder cattle were all up. And is this the bounce? Who knows? I think it may be more just profit taking here late in the week. We got some holidays coming up here next week. Fat cattle trade through Wednesday, 36,100 head, but we had some more trade in Iowa and Nebraska. Iowa about 5,700 head confirmed on Thursday, from 117 to 120 and a half. But it's mostly 118. We can't even get 119 anymore. And dress is about 190, and that dressed has held pretty good at 190 since about the mid part of the week. Nebraska, 7,400 head, 117 to 119 live, but a lot of 118, and that's going to be, about $3 lower for the week. Your dress trade 190 to 192, but mostly 190. Box beef cutout values just a little bit mixed here. Choice cuts on Thursday afternoon, 206.45 up 14 cents. Selects 203.79 down $1.51. Choice select spread still awful narrow at $2.66, which makes it really tough for your high quality feeders that are feeding for quality, because they turn those cattle in on some of these grid pricing deals, and it's just not enough difference to help them out. They're not getting paid, they feel like, for the quality, and that's another reason that they're a little bit having an uprising. Look at your slaughter so far for the week through Thursday, 482,000, 4,000 less than the previous week, 15,000 more than the same week a year ago. Talk about your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on DV auction, 139.08, down another 20 cents, been down hard all week long. That's based on an 800-pound steer. Look at your big sales on Thursday. Pratt, Kansas, winter livestock, and Pratt had a heck of a sale. 3,000 head, but they had some of the best quotes that we saw anywhere all week long. Feeders were steady to $3 lower, except for 7 to 8 weight steers, and they were steady to $3 higher. Calves were kind of a light test, but a higher undertone, but still had some of the most impressive quotes that we saw all week coming out of Pratt. I did hear from a Feeder Flash gang member, a direct sale out of Alma, Missouri. 132 head of 800-pound steers bring $1.37. The deal was made and the cattle were shipped all this week. And a pretty good sale out of the country right there. Farmers and Ranchers Livestock, Salina, Kansas, 1,900 head there. They had snow on Wednesday. That limited a lot of cattle coming in on Wednesday, so I had a lighter run. Feeder steers, though, $1 to $5 higher than last week on light test. Feeder heifers $1 lower. Your trends were just very uneven depending on what happened at the sales the week before. But look at El Dorado, Kansas there. We've been talking about the pressure on these heavy cattle, because it doesn't look like we're going to be able to hold this fat cattle market. So these heavier cattle that are close to the knife, they're going to go into the feedlot right in line with all these calves that went on here over the past 6-8 weeks, and they're going to have to compete with them. They'll probably outperform them, but they're still going to be right in that mix there, and it's bound to hurt the market even more than what the board says. Who knows if we'll be able to hold fat cattle at $1, we get off into summer when all these big numbers of calves went on. But El Dorado, Kansas, look at all these 9-weight cattle, load lots and bigger right here. I tell you what, it's just unbelievable how much market position we've lost on these big cattle. But El Dorado's a good sale, especially seasonally, and you wait till they get those Flint Hill cattle coming off late this summer, and they'll be the top prices. But just want to give you the market out of a good sale barn, 121.75 to 130 on 9-weight steer cattle. Pratt, I told you, had some impressive quotes there, even though they called the market a little bit cheaper for the most part, but they did call the calves higher. 50 head of thin-fleshed 556-pound steers bring $187. And then look at this quote, 63 head of 855-pound steers in Pratt, $144.10, and that would be the top of the market, guys. But our best quote come out of Burlington Livestock Exchange, Burlington, Colorado. 50 head of 613-pound steers bring $174. And that's your Feeder Flash for Friday.